Movie Nut here with a review for Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, the 1994 adventure film from Disney starring Jason Scott Lee, Cary Elwes, Lena Headey, Sam Neil, and John Cleese. After the notorious killer tiger Shere Khan attacks a caravan in the Indian jungle, and after killing his father, a young, Mowgli is raised by wild animals. Years later, Mowgli is drawn to the beauty of Kitty, the governor's daughter. At the same time, he discovers the legendary Monkey City, full of treasure, ruled by none other than King Louie. Eventually, one day, he stumbles across Kitty and her fiancé, Captain, a Boone, who happen to be traveling around there, as well as their doctor, played by John Cleese. Mowgli infiltrates the main city where Kitty lives, but is captured. However, with Kitty's help, he begins to learn human manners and become sophisticated. However, this draws jealousy from the captain, who knows that Mowgli is hiding a secret. Eventually, Mowgli is forced to make a decision and return to the Monkey City in order to help save Kitty from the captain, with the help of his friends Baloo, Bagheera, and Grey Brother, as well as dealing with the mysterious and elusive Shere Khan. The acting all around is pretty good. Here we have a number of recognizable faces. Jason Scott Lee does a pretty good job as Mowgli, playing him more as Tarzan than the Mowgli that most of you are expecting. And there are a lot of moments where he comes off as sweet and serene and almost childlike, showing the naivety of Mowgli when he's outside of the jungle and in the quote-unquote civilized world. And Lena Headey, playing Kitty, the governor's daughter, plays it really, really well. At points I actually thought she was Keira Knightley or Natalie Portman. I don't know, it was the face. And she does bring a lot of humanity to the role, and you do feel her pain when she sees Mowgli being abused by the captain and his fellow soldiers. And speaking of the captain, Cary Elwes really chews up scenery as the corrupt captain, and it's so much fun to watch, especially with one of his subordinates being played by Jason Fleming, a bit part British actor who you might have seen in a whole bunch of films such as Kick-Ass and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And of course we have veterans Sam Neil and John Cleese providing in the roles as the governor and the doctor, and they do very well for the material and bring that needed sincerity to the role. Of course, the real stars here, besides Mowgli, are the animals. Of course, being a live-action version, the animals cannot talk in this one, and as such, the animals have to communicate mainly through body language, and they do it really well, and I'm surprised at just how much I ended up feeling for characters such as Baloo and Bagheera, even though they could not speak. And Shere Khan, every time he was on screen, did feel legitimately menacing, as he should, and while the absence of that sneering, powerful voice we all know and love is a bit of a letdown, given the obvious limitations, I can forgive it, and it still works well all the same. The design and locations look pretty good, considering that I can't recall if this was actually shot in India or not, but it does feel very authentic. The jungles look great, and the city itself, the main British city, looks quite nice. It definitely looks like a place that's in the middle of nowhere with the sun-blasted buildings. And of course the Monkey City itself is just a great old temple right out of a classic adventure story, complete with crumbling ruins and death traps, and it is just beautiful to look at, and it looks really cool on screen. And speaking of cool, the action scenes here are pretty well done. We get the typical sword fights and gun battles. We also get some cool, unique little sequences of Mowgli going through the traps in the Monkey City, of him traveling around the main British city, and of course his final battle against the captain, which all play out really well. And while it's not necessarily groundbreaking, it's not as watered down as you might think from a Disney film, and it plays it very straight. In fact, for a Disney film, it actually turns quite violent. Characters get drowned, die in quicksand, get buried alive. I mean, it gets pretty intense at points. And Mowgli is even tortured during a couple of scenes in the middle of the film, which is, for a kid, must be pretty intense stuff, and it definitely comes across that way. And the score by veteran Basil Polidaris, while not memorable or a classic, certainly not like some of its more famous peers like Indiana Jones, does its job well, providing the necessary high-action, orchestral exoticism you would expect from a film like this, and it does set the tone and mood very well, which just conjures up so many images of adventure and daring do and traps and sword fights and all that good stuff. And now I must talk about the final thing, which as always is the script. Now, as many Kipling scholars have pointed out, despite the title, this is not necessarily a more faithful adaptation of the novel. And for all intents and purposes, it's not that much more a remake of the animated version from 1967. Frankly, it's very much its own film. It does take elements from both, but this is really neither Disney's Jungle Book nor Kipling's Jungle Book. And as Roger Ebert pointed out in his review, it feels very much more like an Indiana Jones film, and I have to fully agree. This film very often plays to a lot of the tropes you've seen in those films. You have the trap-filled temple, you have the relationship between the hero and the girl, a sort of friendship that develops into love. You have the interesting, quirky sidekicks and side characters, here being the doctor and all the animals. You have a power-crazed, greedy villain, which here, of course, is Boone and his men. It's a very by-the-numbers script in many ways, but that's not a bad thing in this case. It works very well. It moves at a rather good pace, and considering this is only 108 minutes, that's great. It doesn't waste time with boring exposition, long-winded scenes, or gives too much time to any one character. Here, the film lets you know enough about each character, just enough to satisfy your curiosity but not drag. And that's what I like about the script here. Summers understands what his audience is coming for when they see this film. Yes, there are a lot of family-friendly moments, as you would expect from a Disney film, mainly with the animals, who of course, aside from Shere Khan, are made up to be cutesy, and there's a lot of really humorous scenes in here with Mowgli playing around with Grey Brother, the wolf, or Baloo. But at the same time, Summers has amped it up and given it that edge, as I said, with the whole action-adventure element, and of course, by having Shere Khan not really be the villain, but sort of a symbol in many ways. He represents Mowgli's growing up, Mowgli's moving on, Mowgli's acceptance of who he is, which is very strange because you'd assume him to be like maybe the pet of Captain Boone, but he's not. He's very much his own character. And in fact, towards the end, there's a scene between Mowgli and Shere Khan that is intense. It's essentially a stare down between the two, but there's a lot of energy and passion in that scene. And there's even subtext about imperialism, colonialism, what is good, what is right, human civilization, and whether it is as civilized as we think it is. And while these questions are not particularly deep or put forward as much in this film, it's just enough so that the film never feels as forced or arbitrary as some films in the past that have tried to squeeze this subtext in have done. I mean, just look at some of the films like, say, Van Helsing, which had a heavy-handed religious element to them. And really, it's these beautiful little moments of Mowgli being with the animals, or Mowgli being taught by Kitty and the Doctor about manners, or just seeing Elwes and Fleming chew up scenery as the villains. It's these wonderful little moments that just add so much to the film. Yes, the action scenes flow great and are pretty well done considering that this was not a super high budget film. But it's these little moments with the characters that really do make this. Now, I'm not saying this is by far the best film ever made or the greatest adventure movie ever made, since really, in terms of adventure, it's very scaled down. In effect, there are only 3 locations: the British city, the monkey city, and the jungle. That's really all it amounts to. And as I said, the characters, you know enough about them just to get by, but they're not the deepest or most brilliant characters you've ever seen on screen. And yes, Mowgli in this version very much is an Indian Tarzan. But as I said, none of that is really bad in this instance because the film knows this and it's having fun with it. The cast are clearly enjoying the roles, and Summers is embracing this classic Saturday afternoon jungle serial tradition. And that's very much what this is. This is very much a throwback to the old jungle serials. This is very much a Stephen Summers Jungle Book as opposed to Kipling or Disney. And so I must give Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book a silver star. While not necessarily the greatest adventure film ever made, it works so well on its own merits. Everything here is of a very high quality. The acting is good, the pacing is good, the settings look beautiful, the animals are absolutely fascinating to watch, and you just really feel Summer's drive behind this. This is the kind of film that if you're not used to adventure movies, or your kids are not used to adventure movies, give this one a try. It's pretty good. Or if you're a fan of The Jungle Book, go into this with an open mind.